I'm going to pause a number of times when I speak because this is an awesome occasion, Shawn. And we really need to think about what's happening here tonight and what's going to happen in the future. I believe there's a mandate on our lives to pursue and to hold up this young man's arms as he goes throughout the earth and tell the truth, what needs to be done in terms of abortion. So as I speak, I'll pause and let it sink in and continue to speak. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to be involved in this celebration, because it is a celebration of Shawn's work. We're celebrating what you're doing, what you're getting ready to do, and how we can help you do it. As a teacher, I was his teacher in middle school, which was an awesome challenge, but I survived and he survived. I had his brother too, Jake. But I can sit back and smile, and I can step and think about those days. Those were challenging days, but those were good days. During my time at TK Gorman, I knew Shawn and Shawn knew me. When Shawn walked into the classroom, he was a leader and he had an entourage with him. He came in with an agenda, and I had an agenda too. Most of the times he had to sit up front, or else he had to sit next to me at my desk. He really had to be supervised. I didn't mind, because when I saw him, I knew something great was in him. I knew it when I saw him, and I knew it was up to me to impart wisdom into his life. Say thank you, Ms. Smith. I feel fortunate to have taught Shawn, and I'm happy to see that I was able to have a positive impact on his development. Because I stepped back and wondered, I said, all of the teachers that he had, why me? And I asked Shawn, I said, why did you ask me to speak? He said, I had a gut feeling. I had a gut feeling, so thank you. Shawn has demonstrated that he's a man of moral and religious conviction. Thank God for the Catholic Church. Thank God for the Catholic Church. I'm so thankful to be a part of the Catholic Church. I'm not Catholic, but I learned so much by being in the Catholic community. One thing I realized that when I was a teacher, you was not just a teacher, you're part of the family. And so whoever I taught, they brought me in and we became one to raise up people like Shawn. You know, my husband asked me, did everybody at TK Gorman, were they successful? As far as I know, they were. A lot of students contact me now and they say, thank you, Ms. Smith. And they're doing great things in this nation. And I believe we, as parents, as educators, will continue to do great things in this nation because we have a great school here. As an educator, Shawn kept me alert. Shawn had an unbelievable sense of humor. He was respectful to his peers, and he was a joker in the classroom. So whenever he made a joke, the class would laugh. Amen, right, Mr. Kent? His sense of humor would get him in trouble in the classroom. And as I mentioned earlier, I always had a special seat for Shawn. Right here. So I just have parting words to say to you, Shawn, from Titus 2:7-8, that as you continue your work, in everything set an example by doing what is good. In teaching, show integrity, seriousness, and soundness of speech that cannot be condemned, so that those who oppose you, because you will have opposers, you may not be ashamed because they have nothing bad to say about you. I'm going to keep it short, and at this time, I would like to read his bio. As we all know, I'm in a small town like Tyler, Texas. Who Who would have ever thought that God would raise a man up like Shawn Carney to turn this nation upside down about abortion? Who would have ever thought? But Shawn was born in Thailand and attended both St. Gregory and Bishop Gorman from kindergarten to his graduation in 2001. What a solid education we have here. It's solid. And we could raise up men and other men and children like him, no telling what this nation will be back like in 2020, 2030, 2040. We keep imparting these truths to the children. We'll see things change in this nation, and it'll be a godly nation once again. So he began as a volunteer in the pro-life movement while still in college. During this time, he helped lead the first ever local 40 Days of Life campaign, which consisted of 40 days of prayer, fasting, and peaceful vigils outside of the local abortion facilities in College Station. You know and I know he needs a lot of prayer. We need to keep praying, because what he's doing, he's taking a stand for righteousness. After graduating from Texas A&M, Shawn was asked to serve as the executive director of the pro-life organization he volunteered for, Coalition for Life, which was made up of more than 60 churches. In 2007, he co-founded 40 Days for Life and helped launch its national and international. To date, 40 Days for Life has been done in 816 cities, in 50 states, and 56 countries. I mean, to me, that's awesome. That is so unbelievable that we represent him and he represents us. Shawn is a regular media spokesperson, and his work has been featured on hundreds of outlets, including Fox News, The Laura Ingraham Show, The Drew's Report, The Guardian, U.S. Today, and Christian media, including The Christian Post, National Catholic Register, Sirius XM, Catholic Radio, EWTN, and Focus on the Family. And we know there's so much more to come, international radios, station, national, and I believe he'll be on CNN. Shawn is one of the most sought after pro-life speakers, addressing audience coast to coast and international. He has executive produced awarding pro-life documentaries. Shawn co-authored the first top-rated book, 40 Days for Life, Discover What God Has Done. Imagine what he can do, and just released his new book. And I believe many of you have a copy of that book tonight, and if not, we have some available for you. The Beginning of the End of Abortion, which became a national bestseller. Shawn is married to Mary Lisa, and she was my student also. I taught her. Quite the opposite of Shawn. And she graduated from Bishop Gorman in 1999. They live in Houston and have 7 children and many more children to come, whether they be birth or from pro-life. Come on up, Shawn.
Well, howdy. Wasn't that something? Thank you, Miss Smith. Wow. I was seated next to you, just to clarify some of those statements, since I do get the microphone. That was against my will. Honor students were never next to Mrs. Smith. You know, the Psalms say that the first step to wisdom is fear of the Lord. And in the 7th grade, I didn't believe that. I thought that the first step to wisdom was fear of Mrs. Smith. And it turns out that that was true. And in all honesty, you know, when they asked me, it's such an honor to be here. I mean, there is no way I could have would have gone into the pro-life movement or would have been able to be part of all that God has done without St. Gregory, from kindergarten all the way to my senior year at Bishop Gorman. And I believe that it is the fundamental role of a Catholic school to prepare our students for the world in which they are going to encounter, and to give them the courage and the faith to live that faith in the world. And I don't believe it has ever been harder to do that than it is in the United States right now. And when they asked me, you want to come back and you want to speak at this event, I was so excited. I've been now across America to every little town and big town 4 or 5 times, and you never forget where you come from, and this is the greatest honor that I could ever have in giving a speech at my alma mater, which I know we're not the Crusaders, they call them Crew. But when I went there, we had to spell out the whole name of the mascot. That's how I learned to spell. So now I've been part of this beautiful pro-life movement. It was never my intention. I'll get to that later. But, in this work, you get a lot of praise. And you get people that just assume the best of you when you meet them, because saving babies is great, and helping abortion facility workers is great, and helping women who have had an abortion is beautiful. But you get a lot of praise that you're not worthy of. People think better of you than you really are. And there have been a lot of moments where there are people that don't agree with our position on abortion, and they don't think it's the greatest thing in the world, and 40 Days for Life has gone to 816 cities, and they don't think the world of me at all. And there have been certain moments where I have 7 beautiful children, and I have a wife, and I have a great family, and that is ultimately what matters in life. But in the moments when it's really tough, I always thank people who gave me that toughness, and the thick-skinned people. And the first person that I remember encountering that did not put up with my nonsense, which was abundant, was Mrs. Smith. And I was extremely grateful for that. Because she was definitely one of those people that did it. It was so tough and scary at times. And yet it irked me that I knew deep down she loved me. And I couldn't do anything about it. And I thank God for that, and I thank God for the success of Bishop Gorman and Father Atlantic and Father Freeland, who was a classmate of mine at Texas A&M and who participated in the very first 40 Days for Life campaign. It's so cool to have him at the school, and for Mrs. Perry, and for this beautiful diocese. How awesome is it that we get to be Catholic, 2% in the Bible Belt. And one of the things that growing up in Tyler, Texas, and going to Bishop Gorman, being one of those 2%, I think I'm related to half of y'all, but I always tell people that, I'm from a diocese that was 2% Catholic, and half of that were actually my family. But that prepared me for the beautiful work that we have done across the country with all of our Protestant and our evangelical brethren. We have worked so closely with Focus on the Family and the Southern Baptist Convention and so many great evangelicals. This is by far the most ecumenical movement in the country. It's something we should take note of, something we should be proud of. It is certainly something that the abortion industry has taken note of. And last year I had the joy of speaking at CARE. I believe BJ is here. There's BJ. Wonderful woman. And Living Alternatives is here as well. I believe, hey, there you go. All of these pregnancy resource centers that are in places like Tyler, Texas, now outnumber abortion providers 5-1 across America. And it's fantastic. If you have a chance or are interested, you can go to the CARE banquet. Let's do a plug. When is it? February 5th? February 5th, and my good friend, Dr. Haywood Robinson, who is a former abortion doctor from South Central LA, will be the speaker, and there is nobody like Haywood. and it is a fantastic testimony. He and his wife were both abortionists, and it's a beautiful testimony, and so if you want to check that out, definitely be sure to do that. I am extremely grateful for this school because it introduced me to, I think, the most powerful thing we have in our culture, and the thing that is under the most attack these days, and that is the joy and the gift of the priesthood. We had wonderful priests in our Catholic school. We had Irish priests in our school. I know at the time Father Michael Doyle taught in the school, and Father Anthony McLaughlin taught in the school, and Bishop Strickland, then Father Strickland, was my pastor growing up. And I just had the blessing of being around wonderful priests. And Gorman gave me access to that. And like so many things, I took that for granted, and I didn't realize the power of having access to priests and access to the sacraments to give me guidance in a very noisy world. You know, I left Gorman in 2001 and went down. I discerned the priesthood all through high school, and then it was clear that I was not supposed to do that, so I know that I made another plan that failed, and that was to go to law school. I was running around interviewing with law schools. I just got back from Notre Dame, and it went well, and that's what Mary Lisa and I were going to do. We were going to move to South Bend. I'm making her watch Rudy every night. I'm like, this is going to be awesome. And the local pro-life organization, Mary Lisa is 2 years older than me. She wouldn't mind me saying that. She's not here. But, so she's class of 99, and I'm class of 01. And so she was supporting us. We were completely broke. We got married my junior year at A&M. I was 21 and she was 23. We got married on her birthday. And, you know, it was beautiful. It was 2 years before we had our first child. And when they came, they came. You know, we had 3 under 3. And that was so much fun, we actually just did it again. So we have 7 beautiful children. And looking back, as we were on our way to law school, the local pro-life organization that she and I volunteered for wanted to hire us. And then their director left, and they wanted me to serve as the new executive director. But Mary Lisa was the one that really got me to take action. You know, the first pro-life event I ever went to was here. It was in Green Acres Baptist Church. And the second was at Gorman, where Father Strickland had a group of pastors speak on Sanctity of Human Life Sunday. And that really struck me. There were only like 30 people there. But it was great. It was a Sunday afternoon. I heard this Baptist preacher give one of the best pro-life talks I've ever heard in my life that day. But when I was at Great Acres, I heard Carol Everett speak. And Carol ran 5 abortion facilities in the Dallas-Fort Worth area before her conversion in the early 1990s. And that really struck me, the idea that this woman systematically could do so many abortions. She actually got busted by 2020 at one point because she was doing abortions on women that weren't even pregnant just to collect the money. And she's a powerful voice. And hearing her in high school had a tremendous impact on me. But I never really did anything. And it was when I got to A&M where Mary Lisa was already there, and she was a sidewalk counselor. She would go out and lovingly offer alternatives to women, and she asked me to go with her. And I didn't really want to go. But I mean, at that point in our life, there wasn't a soul on earth that actually thought I should even be dating her. So, you know, she's like, hey, let's go jump off a cliff. You know, good, let's do that, whatever you want. So I went out there, and I remember at the time, I didn't even know Planned Parenthood did abortions. And I just remember having my heart broken, really. I was 18, 19 years old at the time, and so these were my peers. This was a few weeks before 9/11. And I remember seeing young women and young men go in and come out, and nothing was as it should be. You know, any one of us would pay $400 or $500 to have our greatest fear, our greatest relief, our greatest danger, something that would embarrass us or embarrass our parents, wiped away. in a $400 or $500 surgery. And that's the promise of an abortion. Nobody grows up wanting an abortion, and nobody grows up wanting to work in the abortion industry. And so no one wants to be there on the other side of the fence. And yet these people were here, and they wanted to be here. And relief was nowhere to be found. And it should have been. On paper, it should have been. But we don't live on paper. We have hearts, we have minds, and we have souls. And I'll never forget seeing the first few women leave after having an abortion, realizing this isn't something that is tucked away. There aren't abortions that happen on the bench of the Supreme Court or in the halls of Congress. They happen often in very unassuming neighborhoods throughout our great country where everything seems to be going well. And yet it's not. It's the most barbaric thing that could ever happen to anyone. We would not wish this procedure on our greatest enemy. And it takes absolutely zero common sense to figure out that we would certainly not do this to an innocent baby. And I think it's a sad time in our nation as we just passed 46 years of legalized abortion, and we all saw what shamefully Governor Cuomo did in aggressively doing what Roe v. Wade allows. It allows abortion through all 9 months, and the states regulate it. He decided that he would take advantage of that, but he went a step further and said that you don't even have to be a doctor to do abortions. And I've been all throughout New York State. There are wonderful Catholics there. There are wonderful people there, and they're New Yorkers. They're fighters, and their state is absolutely crazy. And for us in East Texas, we're like, of course, that's common sense. But I've worked with so many wonderful people up there, and it wasn't enough that he signed the bill. They cheered, and they lit the World Trade Center in pink. And for us in Tyler, Texas, or wherever we are, it is telling what his quote is. The reason he wanted the building lit was to shine a light, tell them what was coming. It's not enough to have this in your own state. This is a very aggressive movement, and it has to be responded to with courage and with love and with mercy, but it has to be responded to. And I know for Catholics, there's everybody, I've been asked 100,000 times, should he be excommunicated? Which lay people don't excommunicate people. And of course, if you ask your average Joe, it's like, by FedEx, yes. But I will say that as a Catholic, one wonders what you have to do in order to get excommunicated if he's not. What would you publicly have to advocate for? But beyond that, because that can be a rabbit trail, it's the act itself. We have to be outraged, but in the end, this will go on. There are a few, and thankfully there's only a few, abortion doctors in our wonderful country that will open offices in New York State and do this, and there are women that will fly there. And it is I have seen, we have 40 Days for Life campaigns outside of all the late-term abortion facilities in the country. I write about a few of them in the book, and it is a sobering sight to see a beautiful pregnant mom walking in, and then to see her coming out after she comes back. It's a multi-day procedure. And I think we allow that to break our hearts so that we realize the great gift that we have and the great victory that was accomplished on Good Friday. That gives us our strength. And for all of my years at A&M, seeing women come in and go out and having the opportunity to work at a local pro-life organization and in the midst of that, we started 40 Days for Life. We did the first campaign in 2004, and I'll brag on him. Young Charles Vreeland, now Father Vreeland, he took every single day, he would go out and pray out there from 8 o'clock at night to 11 o'clock at night. And it was a great commitment, and Father Vreeland, was just such a dedicated man. And boy, all the women wanted to marry him. And what a gift that we got a priest instead. But as our 40 Days for Life ended and it lowered our local abortion numbers by 28% in College Station, Texas, and then we never imagined that we would ever hear the term 40 Days for Life ever again. And then a group in Seattle contacted us, and then Madison, Wisconsin, and then Charlotte, North Carolina. So in the fall of 2007, the man who originally hired me, David B. Wright, and I, we launched 40 Days for Life as a nationally coordinated effort in the fall of 2007, hoping we'd get about 20 cities. That was our goal. And we were blown away when we had 89 cities sign up. I did a show on EWTN to help launch the campaign. We did that in June of 2007, and then in the summer we trained our leaders and we launched it. We were in 89 cities in 33 states, and that led to the Lent campaign. And so over the last 11 years, we've done 2 campaigns per year, in the fall and in the Lent. And Tyler will now have their first 40 Days for Life campaign starting on March the 6th. And they can sign you up afterwards. We definitely will plug that. And it's outside the Planned Parenthood Abortion Referral Center. And a 40 Days for Life campaign in Tyler is really, it's very one-sided. I mean, it does a lot of damage. The staff is not ready for it, and they read about it on the internet, and then you're like, great, they're in our wonderful, peaceful town. So it can do a lot of good, and it will do a lot of good for the pregnancy resource centers. That's the main thing that it will do, because people will not go there. They'll go to the Pregnancy Resource Center. And we've worked so closely with the 2,700 pregnancy resource centers across the country, because we're not there to tell women not to have an abortion, they're going to burn in hell, and good luck with it. We offer them alternatives, and better alternatives, and free alternatives. And it's been a tremendous joy. And so please participate in your local campaign. I think one of the most surprising things is 40 Days for Life grew. We doubled every year for the first 3 years, and then it ended up going internationally. I have great regret. I was not a great student. Thank you for leaving that out of the introduction, Mrs. Smith. I didn't set any records for grades at all, but I really regretted not learning Spanish. From preschool at Caldwell, I had to take Spanish. They start teaching the alphabet all the way through A&M, and I didn't learn Spanish. And then last year I had to go to Colombia, and it was just, kind of embarrassing. But to see all of the campaigns go international to places like Africa and like Latin America, where there's a thriving Catholic community and where people love children and love life, to have, that is us, that is Planned Parenthood International, going over to Latin America and Africa, and they call themselves Pro Familia, and they set up abortion facilities, and they do them in countries like Nigeria where it's illegal, but it goes on. So we have a huge presence in Africa and in Latin America. And we should be proud that in the United States, we are by far the leader in the world for the pro-life movement. Many countries blame us for having abortion in their nation, and some of them are right, some of them aren't. But they also look to us for the solution. Whether it's something like 40 Days for Life or setting up a pregnancy resource center, they look to us for the solution, and it's something we should be very proud of. We're criticized so much these days as somehow we're this country that just doesn't care about the rest of the world, and it's just not true. When you go to these countries, those are Americans over there. We are a very generous nation, and we just don't brag on that a lot as we get criticized as somehow being, selfish and closed to everybody else. Quite the opposite in the abortion issue. It is quite the opposite, and it's something that we should be very proud of. But the reason that it spreads, the reason that I believe God has used something as simple as 40 Days for Life is because in the end, as we have 46 years of legalized abortion, we have not gotten over this issue. There's a lot of legal precedent for abortion. This should be a done deal that we're all supposed to just live with and be sad about. It's not something that we're supposed to be optimistic about it actually ending in our country. But it's about hearts and minds. It's such a cliche, and it's true. The conversion gate on this issue since 1973 only swings in one direction. It only swings in one direction. We're not a movement of a bunch of self-righteous Christians trying to tell everybody else how to live. Quite the opposite. We're a movement of bad history students in 7th grade. We're a movement of those women who have had an abortion. Men who have encouraged and often coerced or paid for an abortion. Doctors who have done an abortion. And folks that genuinely supported reproductive rights who are now pro-life. There are not Baptist or Catholic moms that had 5 kids that ran a pregnancy center that turn 55 and have a midlife crisis and realize they should have been running an abortion facility their entire life. And they leave the church, they abandon their children, and they go and run a Planned Parenthood abortion facility. We don't have those books or people on the speaking circuit sharing those stories. Believe me, they would definitely be on CNN, which I got bumped twice. Fake news, whatever. We all speak differently now the last 2 years. Trump gave us terms. They're like he's like Starbucks. And it really is a movement of converts. And a movement of converts can only be a movement of hope. And of course, it's the scientific reality of life in the womb, that life begins at conception. And that is the good thing about New York. I mean, our Lord will always use great evil to bring out a greater good, and I believe he's going to do that. It doesn't matter what Cuomo does or if people are cheering. He will use it for a greater good, and people will think about and I've already had a lot of emails about this, if we can end the life of a baby at 40 weeks, 30 minutes before the mom goes into labor, if you just start moving your way back, we don't grow in dignity during gestation. We just grow. But we don't get more dignity. We don't get more value at 16 weeks than we had at 8 weeks, and 24 weeks than we had at 16 weeks. So we've created, late-term abortion has created the awkward question of asking ourselves, when are we comfortable getting rid of you? I mean, you can live outside the womb. I have 7 kids. None of them can really live outside the womb. There's 40-year-olds living in their parents' basement that can barely live outside the womb. So we enter this shock, and the shock is good, and the shock came with Gosnell, the Philadelphia late-term abortionist, and the shock came with David Daleiden, where the expose of the trafficking of baby body parts. And New York losing their mind and moving off of Earth is a shock. But it is also a challenge of what kind of a country do we want? What kind of a Catholic school do we want? What kind of a diocese do we want? When we work ourselves back, when are we comfortable killing the baby? When can we sleep at night? And there is no answer. The only answer is to end it. That at no point, whether your baby is disabled, whether, people say, well, you could be aborting Beethoven, and you could be, that you could be aborting a disabled child who has the same amount of dignity. You could be aborting a kid who, probably won't amount to much in our view or whatever. But they all have dignity. And that is why abortion is ending. Because this movement has gone to work. We have all the pregnancy resource centers with great state laws. Texas has gone from 47 abortion facilities to 23 in 5 years. Over half of all the abortion facilities have closed in the last 25 years. And I will say, one of the scary things for Tyler, and I've heard 2 former Planned Parenthood directors say this, is that Tyler fits the perfect model for an abortion facility. It has the largest junior college in the state, I think, and it has UT Tyler, which is robust, but it also has the rural area, and that's a big market. That's a huge market. And Lufkin no longer has an abortion facility. And so I've always heard former Planned Parenthood workers, and Abby has said this, that Tyler is on their radar to do RU-486 abortions. And once they come, it's so hard to get rid of that. And so I really encourage you to take part in the 40 Days for Life campaign. But there is so much momentum in the pro-life movement. But that momentum, it's not headlines or political victories or anything like that. That's all part of it. That's a reflection of what's at the root. What's at the root is what you see at the March for Life and what I definitely saw today when I spoke to the high school at Gorman. And that is a true culture of life. An authentic Catholic education that equips you to go out into the world and joyfully witness this beautiful faith. Yesterday was the feast day of St. Thomas Aquinas. I'm sure all of you were celebrating with just buckets of wine, and it was a blast. And they weren't doing that in New York. But he's the most brilliant mind in the history of Christianity. Is St. Thomas Aquinas. And yet, he has a great simple quote. He says, "The chief fruit of charity is joy." The chief fruit of charity is joy. And that's what you see at the March for Life. That's what you see. I've seen it in Tyler when you go to Mass and there's all these young people with a bunch of kids. And you see it at 40 Days for Life campaigns. And you see a true change of what we have gotten ourselves into in our cultural mess. With abortion, with redefining the institution that produces the fruit that is attacked in abortion, with all of the hijacking of the last 15 years of the homosexual movement, now the transgender movement, all of the confusion, all of the pain that comes with those things, it boils down to what is right, to what is good, and to what is natural. G.K. Chesterton wrote a great book. He was an atheist. He became a Christian. He was an Anglican, and then he converted to Catholicism. And he wrote a beautiful book called The Everlasting Man. And there was a prominent atheist in England who read it, and it really made him angry. He was really struggling through this book, so he tracked down G.K. Chesterton and started arguing with him, and they talked about it, and he reread the book, The Everlasting Man, and then he converted, and he became an Anglican, and his name is C.S. Lewis. And Chesterton, who, was the nail in the coffin for the conversion of C.S. Lewis, is often a forgotten writer, probably because he smoked and drank too much. Those are always the greatest writers, sadly. And he has really a quote that sums up a lot of the, you just can't throw your hands up in the air with all this stuff. But he said, if we reject the supernatural, it is only a matter of time before we reject the natural. And that means that things today are really not complicated. And we hear that a lot. It's a complicated issue. We hear that a lot. And it's not. It's usually an issue that revolves around some kind of pain, or some kind of hurt, or some kind of mistrust, or with the transgender, just genuine mental illness, where you think that you're something that you're not. And that is why the gift of a Catholic education is more valuable today than it ever has been. Probably in the history of the world. Certainly the history of Western civilization. Because the joy that is required to sort of navigate through our culture, whether kids leave Gorman and they go to college, or they join religious life, or they run off to be an actor, or they run off to do whatever it is they're going to do, they will be encountered with so much that challenges them. And this gives us the option of looking at the world through the eyes of the world, or looking at the world through the eyes of Christ. And one promises freedom and always ends in slavery, and the other one promises freedom and always ends in freedom and joy. And I think that raising children, I have 7 small children, it has in a way been easier. And our kids go to a wonderful Catholic school in Houston, and it makes it easier to point out. You know, a gray area is much different, but we're very black and white these days. And it causes a lot of division. And there's appropriate division and there's inappropriate division. But we want division on the appropriate things. Because without it, it's dangerous. And there is no greater time to sacrifice, to send your kids to St. Gregory and to Bishop Gorman, and to encourage others to do the same, or to give money to those schools so they can educate as many Catholics and as many Christians in this great community, and send them out into a world that is starving for the joy of Christ, and starving. We look at these kids were awesome today. I call them kids, but it just doesn't seem like we were in high school that long ago. But they are kids, and they asked a lot of great questions. And there were no jokes. There were no dumb questions. These were substantive. It was awesome. It was an hour. They let it just keep going. It was wonderful. And, you know, it gave me a lot of encouragement, because these kids are going to face so many trials and tribulations. And we should. We're not here to live in a bubble. And we're not here to sort of do the Southern thing where we throw our hands up watching the nightly news, and, you know, we see something like New York, or we hear bad, you know, there's bad news everywhere, but there's good news everywhere. You know, we can't throw our hands up in the air and be like, bless their heart, they're just going to have to answer to Jesus. You know? Some people go to hell, you know? That's the way it is. You know, we don't really get to do that. Okay? It sounds nice, you know? Or let God deal with them. You know, we say that a lot. It's like, well, we didn't let God deal with the Nazis. We had D-Day. You know? I mean, there's times when we actually take action, and we don't get to sit out. Nor do we want to. Nor do we want to. And we don't want to run out the door and become activists and get busy and get on 50 committees and do 82 things in our community and neglect our families. That's not pro-life, that's not Catholic, that's not Christian, and it's not good. But if we start with prayer in the home, and we use our great rights in this great country to live, of course, for God, first and foremost. But when we do that, we are being patriotic. And we do this for God and for country. And that changes a lot of hearts and minds. And it's not because we're perfect, because we're not. but it's the willingness to struggle. Saint Jose Maria has the greatest quote in the world. He says, "A saint is one who struggles against the world." A saint is one who struggles. Because we don't have to reject sin. We can stay silent. We don't have to pray. We don't have to go to Mass. We don't have to do anything. We really don't. We can do what we want. It's not always good for us doing what we want. We have to will the will of God and embrace the fact that it's a struggle. That it's a struggle. And I really saw that today at Corman. I saw a lot of kids who want to live their faith, are excited about living their faith, and realize the great joy in doing so. And not doing so can get you into a lot of trouble. And some people don't want to get into trouble because they don't want to get into trouble. But it's better to not get into trouble out of love for God, and to grow in virtue, and to not be afraid to witness to that which is true. Because that which is true is always connected to love. It's always connected to the cross. It's always connected to what Fulton Sheen said, the week that changed the world. That he really did die on Good Friday, and he really did rise on Easter Sunday, and that is how we live our life, as if that actually happened. It's not a theory, and it's not something we admire from afar, but it's something that we live every day when we want to and when we don't want to. And in that struggle, every little thing we do has meaning. Whether we're cleaning up cereal from our kids or trying to get somebody to... I did an interview once and the guy said, I can't believe you just said that. And it wasn't, I didn't think it was controversial. I said, you know, when you struggle to get your kids in the car and get your 8-year-old to soccer practice on time, that's pro-life. And a guy that gets stuck in traffic and gets to his office and he doesn't complain to half the staff about his day and his traffic issues, that's pro-life. And the guy said, I never thought about that. But it's so true. You know, we want to be very flashy and big, and that's just our culture right now. But it is the little things that we do every single day that I believe is changing our nation on this issue. And we have lost marriage. We have lost some battles. But we have not lost the battle for the unborn. And the world is looking. The world is looking at what they're finding, I think, and what I see, is places like Tyler, Texas that have a robust Catholic school, a fantastic bishop right after another fantastic bishop, vocations through the roof. That is encouraging. You know, Walker Piercy, who's a famous Catholic novelist, he said that the revival of the Catholic Church in America will come through the South. He was a convert. He said it'll come through the South, and that was in the 60s. Just seemed out of his mind. And now we see the Diocese of Memphis has 5 times the amount of vocations it did 10 years ago. Diocese of Nashville, booming. Atlanta, booming. Tallahassee, Charlotte. Charlotte's just growing like crazy with Catholics and vocations. Mobile. It's Tyler, Texas. It's encouraging to see. Because all of this stuff, it's just noise. In the end, it's the same. It's the world versus our Lord. It's just noise. And prayer silences those cheers that we saw in the New York Senate floor. Prayer silences the anger that drives so many movements in our country. Prayer is the key. And there are two goals for a Catholic school, I believe. And that is to, number one, equip kids with the faith so that they can live in this world. When they leave, live their faith in the world. And the other is to give them the faith and the confidence to know this world is not home. We're not home. There's so much anxiety for people who believe that this is home, who believe that this is it, who believe we have the fullness of happiness on this earth. And we are not home, we are pilgrims. We are pilgrims, and when you have that culture at a high school, that Christ is everywhere, he's beside me, he's in front of me, he's behind me, and you'll have flows. You can't control what a kid does. Some of them are going to leave the church, some of them are going to make bad decisions, but it's that seed that they get at a Catholic school, and that's what you invest in. I know later tonight you're going to have two opportunities to give, a one-time gift and a monthly gift, and that's what you're investing in. You are investing in that foundation that it is up to our Lord to bring to fruition later on. It's that seed. Because no matter what, you can't always root out your faith. You can't always get rid of it. It will survive many sins. It'll survive many bad decisions. It'll survive mistakes. It'll survive getting married, having kids, switching jobs, moving, flat tires, broken promises, betrayal at work, whatever it is. That seed will last. God never abandons people. And we have to trust that when we invest in a Catholic school, because that's what you're investing in. And I got the fruit of that. There were tons of people that gave money to Gorman. And my parents paying for me to go there, the greatest gift they could have possibly given me. There were so many sacrifices. You're not thankful. You don't even think about that. You're 16. Selfish is on your business card. And looking back, which, I'm 36, and I'm now saying, this isn't the America that I grew up in, And we're like, what happened the last 15 years? So, that's what you're investing in. There was a very notorious abortionist right outside of Washington, D.C. He had a large facility in Manassas, Virginia. He was an aggressive guy, kind of not so nice to our leaders. And our local leader was Mike Baldwin, great guy, flew the 777 for United Airlines. So he, on his spare time, led the 40 Days for Life campaign in Manassas in front of this abortionist. And this abortionist would brag about no longer being Catholic. I was raised Catholic, but now I'm normal. That kind of thing. And they just prayed for him, and they were always nice to him. And he led the campaign with a retired Marine colonel. It's great guys. So the Pregnancy Resource Center decided to move in. This guy was in a shopping center, and they moved in next door to his abortion facility. And they shared a wall. It was great. We did that in College Station. We were next to Planned Parenthood. That's where Abby Johnson walked right into. And then when that abortion facility closed, we were able to get the property, and it's now our headquarters for 40 Days for Life, is the closed Planned Parenthood where 40 Days for Life first began. And this is happening a lot around the country. So they moved in next door, and they shared a wall with this abortionist. And in the back room, that's where all the abortions took place. And because there was just a wall, they could hear the abortions. They could literally hear the machine come on. And they decided to put a chapel in that back room. And sometimes they had adoration back there, but they would just sit back there and pray. It was absolutely beautiful, never knowing their impact. And one day they started to sing the Divine Mercy Chaplet. for the sake of his sorrowful passion, have mercy on us and on the whole world. They said it over and over again, and they would sing it. And this abortion doctor came out one day after they were in there at 3 o'clock, the hour that our Lord died. They were singing this beautiful prayer. And he came out and he was shaking, and he looked at Mike and he said, "I think I need to see a priest." And if it hadn't have been for his hand shaking, they would have thought he was just pulling their leg. But they saw him in his body language. And they said, "Well, we can arrange that." So they literally took him by the hand. They went in and they got his information. And they said, "What happened?" And he said, "I was doing abortions and I heard that prayer and I remembered it. And I looked at my hands and I thought, what in God's name have I done with my life?" And he saw a priest the very next day. He never did another abortion. That facility ended up struggling. It closed, and it is now a location for Catholic Charities. But we have to trust what our Lord can do when we just step out. And the best formation for that, the best push out the door, is solid Catholic education. And you have that. We can never root it out. If an abortionist, a guy who did 10,000 abortions throughout his career, can hear one prayer that he hears from his childhood, remembered from his childhood, and leave, then there's hope for everyone. There's hope for everyone. But we have to invest in that seed of faith. We have to give people access to the faith. And that starts at Catholic schools, and you have 2 great ones. And do not take that for granted, because not all of them are great. We know that. But yours is. Yours is. So it's easy money to give. It's easy money to give because it goes right to the heart of the problem. There have been so many problems. But it goes right to the heart of restoring the family, of restoring the church, and giving our students the best that we could possibly give them in this world, which is Christ. That's what they need, because He silences the noise of the world. He is the King of Kings. He is the one who has the final word. And we have to, in low tide and high tide, keep our focus on Him. And that is the great joy. That is the great freedom. And that is something that is a legacy you will never regret as Catholics in Tyler, Texas. At this time, I want to ask one person from each table to take the pledge cards out of the envelope. These are for one-time gifts and for monthly gifts to Tyler Catholic Schools. And I encourage you to do both. I know often we come to events like this and you decide either or. But for a Catholic school especially, a monthly commitment goes a long way. It allows the staff to focus on the school and not on fundraising throughout the rest of the year. And so I really encourage you to give monthly. And for a one-time gift, they don't lock the doors, but you know what you can give. You may be able to write a check for $25,000 or $10,000 or $500 or $50, whatever it is. Stretch yourself. You know what you can give, and it goes to a great Catholic school with a proven record and proven leadership. And so on one side, you'll see the option for one-time gift, and on the other side, you see the option for monthly gift. And I encourage you to give both. I encourage you to give both. So at this time, we'll have a moment of silence and a reflection song. old friends and wonderful people. What a great place. Thank you, Father, and thank you, Mrs. Perry, for your leadership. God bless y'all. Keep up the great work. Go Crusaders.